Hello everybody, welcome back to another listening revision class. My name is Laura. I'm an English teacher with Merseyside Publishing, and today is the last part of our series in the listening revision classes. So we went through part 3 yesterday, and we went through parts 1 and 2 last week. And they're all posted on our Facebook page if you would like to find them and go back and have a go at them. All of the information is on the Facebook page, so you can access that there. So we won't be going through those parts today. I think you can hear maybe builders outside. I think I'll shut that window. So all of that information is on the Facebook page. So we won't be going through those things today. We'll be going through part 4 instead. So I'll be going through the format of the exam for anybody who's not sure, just really quickly before we begin. And also, until then, I'd also like to just say that we will be back next week again between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. As usual. But I'm open to suggestions for anything that anybody in particular would like to see. So if you do have a suggestion of that, please just leave it in the comments box. Never know which way I'm pointing here for the comments box. And let me know what you'd like to see. And I'll get that on a list for you. Okay, hi to everybody who's commenting. I'm just going to give everybody 1 minute to join the live stream before we get started. Hello, Walia. Nice to have you in the live stream. Hope that you got my feedback from the work that you sent me. Just let me know in the private chat if you'd like. So I'll give everybody 1 more minute, and in the meantime I'll try and get up the slideshow because, as you know, I'm not the best with technology. Okay, I can get it up. Let's see, share screen. Okay, I think you can see that now. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so like I say, today we'll be covering the last part in the series of the listening revision classes, going through the listening exam and doing some more examples. So if anybody would just like to use this time to get maybe a notepad and paper, or open the notes section on their phone or their laptop, whatever you're watching me on today, we will be doing 2 practice sessions for the part 4 of the IELTS listening. So if you're interested in taking part, you'll need something to write down your answers. Okay, so let's begin. Today we'll be focusing on listening skills in your IELTS exam, your exam format, and how to listen for answers. So that's going to be the focus of today's lesson. The exam is going to take 30 minutes, and there are 40 questions, each worth 1 mark. So even though in this exam I haven't limited it to just 10 questions, because of course we haven't got all the time in the world, and I want to get you as much practice as possible. In the real exam there's 4 sections, each with 10 questions, and each one is worth 1 mark, so 40 marks in total. Okay, and you'll be given time to look through the paper and look at the questions before you hear the audio. This is important because if you are familiar with what is about to be asked, it will be easier to identify your answer while the audio is being played. So the sorts of questions that you're going to be asked, they could be different sorts of information that you should be listening for. So for example, it could be a date, it could be a name of a place, it could be a verb, because if you read through the paper and you see multiple choice or you see sentence completion, you should be able to roughly gauge what topic you're going to be listening about and what sorts of things the questions are asking you. If you can anticipate that, then that's half the battle, and you won't be caught off guard when it comes to hearing the audio. The answering format will change for all the different sections. Like I just said, there might be multiple choice, which usually consists of a question and then 3 optional answers that you would choose from. That you could do also matching, which would be 2 lists of things, and you'll be asked to join the 2 parts of the sentence that join up. And there's also labeling a diagram. So you'd be asked to look at the diagram beforehand and understand the diagram before you add labels to it. Okay, so perhaps it's part of a system, perhaps it is a diagram of a building and you're being asked to navigate it, that sort of thing. And the last one and most common one is sentence completion, which is obviously just the sentence and then you add the end, or there's gaps in the middle for you to add words. And today we'll be focusing on both sentence completion and also multiple choice. So we will be going through those too. But we did do a diagram yesterday. So if you did want to have a look at that style, then feel free to just go to our Facebook page and watch that there. Okay. The audio will use a range of accents and recordings are only heard once. So make sure that you're listening the first time, basically, because you're not going to hear that audio again. So you need to make sure that you're concentrating the first time around. I did say, explain it last week. Basically, when the audio is first played, you'll be given a chance to get used to the voice that is speaking. So that means that a portion of the audio, perhaps the first 30 seconds, will be played. And they will provide you with an answer which has already been completed. So you can see the style of the question and answer, and also you can get used to the accent of the speaker. The audio, as I said there, uses a range of accents, all English speaking ones, native English speakers. So you're not going to get, a German accent or a French accent, for example. But the different accents could be American, they could be Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, Scottish, Welsh, and also different parts of England, because I'm not sure if you know this, but all over England, there are lots of different accents. My accent in particular is a Scouse accent. So this is why these sessions could be quite helpful for you, because my accent is not the Queen's English, the really well-spoken English accent. So it's getting you used to just another one that could come up on the exam. But I'd also like to remind you that in order to be familiar with the other accents that could come up, it's a really good idea to try to watch television in English from different parts of the world, because that can get you used to those accents. So another excuse to watch TV for revision purposes. If you could watch, I don't know, I think I've suggested before, even Friends, the American sitcom, is really good for that, because the jokes are easily understood and the dialogue's not too difficult. So it can be both entertaining and educational at the same time, which is great. So yeah, just as a reminder, do try to become comfortable with other accents, English accents, because that will really help you in the exam if you're not completely taken aback by what you're about to hear. Okay, the test is always in 4 parts. So as I said, we've been through parts 1 and 2 last week. Part 1 is a general conversation between 2 people. A general conversation could be a general topic about anything really. It could be, sort of questions and answers between an assistant and somebody who requires help. Part 2 is a monologue about a general topic. So that would be just one person speaking, and that is talking for 7 minutes. All of the audios are for 7 minutes. And it's a conversation, a monologue on a general topic. So somebody just talking perhaps about their interests or what they did last night. And you'll be asked comprehension questions about that general topic. Then part 3 is a conversation between 4 people in an educational setting. So we covered part 3 yesterday. My sister joined me and she was the other person, but I couldn't get 4 people to do it, so had to be just the 2 of us. And an educational setting usually mimics a seminar or a tutorial, an educational discussion about an academic subject. So I know quite a lot of people have found that really difficult, the academic subject thing, because it is just that little bit harder than the general conversation. It brings up words that maybe you're not sure about, but these things are really, really important to become comfortable with, particularly for those English learners who are wanting to attend university in the UK. Obviously you need to understand your tutor and your subject to be able to study here long term. So do practice parts 3 and 4. Today we'll be focusing on part 4, which is a monologue on an academic subject. So again, that's just one person speaking. It'll be me speaking for 7 minutes, this time on an academic subject. So again, we're talking much more professional topic in a professional capacity, talking about a serious thing, and it mimics the style of a lecture. So you might be familiar with it from that. So I've got 2 practice sessions today for us to go through. And I'd like to invite everybody who's watching to join in and to answer the questions with me. It would be really useful to see how difficult or easy you find it, and what it's like to answer those questions. So please do join in if you are able. Okay, last slide before we do start the example. And I'd just like to remind you before we start that you should write down your answers while you're listening to the audio. Don't try and memorize what you've heard, because these audios aren't the most interesting in the world and you will likely forget what's just been said. So don't try and memorize it. Don't try to summarize. And in the exam, it might be a good idea just to jot down things that you're hearing as you are listening. If you do miss the question and you're not sure what it's asking, just note down anything that you can hear that you think might be important, and you can always go back at the end and try to fill it in even when the audio isn't playing. And also in the real exam, try to spell correctly, because bad spelling does lose you marks in the real exam. I know it's quite difficult, especially for the academic one, but in order to achieve those high bands, you've really got to pay attention to your spelling. Okay, so we'll begin now. Thank you, Fatima, for joining us today. You're just in time for the audio, thankfully. Hopefully you'll all be able to join in and you'll find it really useful. But I'd also like to just quickly say, if you are joining in, please write them down on some paper or in your notes section. Don't put them in the chat, because if you do, everyone else can see your answers and they'll probably copy you. So yeah, pop them on a notepad with a pencil or in your phone, but not in the chat for now. We will get to those questions. We'll get to your answers in the answering section. Okay, so just like the style of the exam, I'll give everybody a couple of minutes before we start just to read through the slides of course, in the real exam, you'd be able to open the paper to the questions, and you could spend a couple of minutes reading them all in one go. But unfortunately, because we don't have an exam paper and we only have the PowerPoint slides, I'll have to flip through them for you. So sorry about that, but I couldn't really see another way around it, to be honest. Okay, so I'll make the slide big now, and I'll flip to the first section, and I'll give everybody 1 minute to read each of the 3 slides. Oh no, there's 4 slides. And become comfortable with what's being asked, okay? So read the information, look at where the gaps are, and have a think about what might be asked, okay? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide now. So read this one next. Just read through the slide and have a look at the information that's being asked. Okay, I'm going to move on to the 3rd slide now. And then the 4th slide. And finally, the 5th slide. So this is the last one to read. Okay, I think that should have given everybody time to read all of the slides. So for those people who are just asking now, don't worry Ghaznavi for being late. We're about to start the audio. So it will be a monologue speaking for 7 minutes on an academic subject. If you couldn't gather from the slides, it's going to be about John Keats, the poet, one of my favourite poets. Hopefully I can teach you a bit about his life and you can answer the questions that are going to be on the slide. So I'll move the slide along as you're listening, and yeah, Have a listen, see if you can answer those questions. Don't put them in the chat. If you do, then people will copy your answers. So please write them down in front of you or on your phone or whatever you have near to hand. As you can see, it's a mix between multiple choice and sentence completion. So you'll need to write down the word for sentence completion that you think will be in the sentence. And for multiple choice, write down A, B, or C. Okay. Hopefully everybody is ready, and we'll begin now. So everybody have your writing material ready, and I'll make the slide big and turn up your volume so you can hear me, okay? Okay then, let's begin. This lecture will provide an introduction to the life and work of John Keats, the great Romantic poet. Let's begin with a biographical outline, which will serve as a rough outline of the sorts of events that might have shaped his writing. John Keats was born on the 31st of October in London to an average working class family. Unlike his contemporary poets, like Shelley and Byron, Keats was not from a privileged background. His parents were unable to afford private education for him or his siblings at Eton or Harrow, so he attended Clark School instead from 1803. This school had a relatively progressive curriculum and liberal outlook compared with the other educational institutions at the time. In 1804, Keats's father died from a skull fracture after suffering a fall from his horse. Keats's mother quickly remarried, and he was sent away with his siblings to live with their grandparents. His mother appointed 2 guardians for her children, who took over the care of the Keats children when she died in 1810 of tuberculosis. His guardians soon apprenticed him to a surgeon, Thomas Hammond. By 1815, he was accepted as a student of Guy's Hospital in London as an assistant to surgeons. This marks a significant aptitude for medicine, given that Keats was so young and from so unremarkable a background. However, given that anesthesia had not been invented at this time, Keats is likely to have witnessed some really horrific things during his time as a medical student. Some modern-day critics have attributed his wildly imaginative poetry to his desire to escape from the awful memories of terrible things that he saw in the operation theatres. Also from 1815, Keats came under the influence of the famous writer Leigh Hunt. Driven by ambitions to be a glorious poet, and yet restricted by his studies in medicine, Keats fell into periods of serious depression. He became a certified doctor in December of 1816, but he soon renounced his career in medicine, declaring to his guardians that he could not live if he did not pursue poetry. He began to write much more substantial poems after he'd quit the medical profession, and was even introduced to the public in Leigh Hunt's article in a widely circulated newspaper. His first poetry book was a failure and was not well received by the public. In 1817, Keats met other important writers from the era, such as the Shelleys, William Godwin, and William Hazlitt, and in December he attended the Immortal Dinner. This was a dinner held on the 28th of December. The dinner is given this name because the writers who attended are immortalized by their works. They are alive even in modern memory for their incredibly gifted poetic abilities. In this year, Keats also finished his first major poem called Endymion. In January of 1818, Keats's beloved brother Tom began spitting blood. This meant that his death from tuberculosis was approaching. Keats's extensive medical knowledge helped him to care for Tom, but he was also heavily burdened on his state of mind, as he knew the horrific suffering that lay ahead for his brother. In April of 1818, he finished another of his very famous poems called Isabella or the Pot of Basil. He began a walking tour with his friends, but had to return home because he was very unwell with a severe cold and a sore throat. When he returned, Keats found his brother Tom gravely ill. In November of 1818, Keats met 18-year-old Fanny Brawne, who he fell in love with on first sight. He continued throughout November to nurse his beloved brother Tom until Tom died on the 1st of December 1818, aged just 19. He moved out onto Hampstead Heath in a house which has now been converted into a museum celebrating Keats's life and accomplishments. In February, he wrote his amazing narrative poem, The Eve of St. Agnes. In April, Fanny Brawne moved in next door to Keats with her mother. It was in this house that Keats wrote his finest poetry. 5 of his 6 great odes were written in this house. Possibly he had been inspired by the sight of his true love from his bedroom window, and he often spent time watching her taking walks in the garden as he wrote from his study. He also wrote several other narrative works, such as La Belle Dame sans Merci, Lamia, and Hyperion, during this time. Newspaper critics absolutely hated his works and cruelly insulted them to the public. The sales of his poetry plummeted, and Keats was devastated by his failure as a poet. He seriously considered giving up poetry during this period. It has been said that Keats never recovered from the trauma of this failure, and that this contributed to his ill health towards the end of 1819. The reviews of his poetry were horrendously unkind and more harsh towards Keats than towards any other writers featured. It has been suggested that the highbrow, upper-class reviewers did not like Keats, that Keats was aspiring above the usual vocations of working-class origins, and decided to see him return to the medical profession, as his class belongs there. The cruel irony is that these poems would become some of the most important works ever to be published in the English language, but that Keats would not live to see it. Depression and disease loomed over Keats's life, and he was unable to marry his love, Fanny Brawne, due to his financial state and poor health. In a letter to Fanny from this time, Keats wrote that the only 2 thoughts that occupied his walks are your loveliness and the hour of my death. Tuberculosis, the disease which had claimed the life of his brother just 2 years earlier, took hold of Keats in September of 1820. It is understood that he likely contracted the disease from the time that he spent nursing his younger brother. He was advised to move to a warmer climate and left for Rome with the knowledge that he would probably never see Fanny again. In February, he coughed up blood just as his brother had done. He famously remarked, "I know the colour of that blood. It is arterial blood. I cannot be deceived in that colour. That drop of my blood is my death warrant. I must die." Tragically, his time as a medical student had taught Keats all too well the fate that lay ahead of him. He felt unable to write to Fanny and died 5 months later in Rome, in February of 1821, aged just 25. It was commonly thought at the time that this was not tuberculosis, but the grief of his failed poetry, which ultimately killed Keats. The villa in which he died stands still next to the Spanish Steps in Rome and has been made into a museum in his memory. Fanny stayed in mourning for 6 years after his death, and it was only in the years after his death that Keats was recognised as a genius and his poetry was celebrated for what it really actually is. To this day, he is venerated as one of the finest poets that has ever lived. Okay, so that is the end of the audio. Hopefully you will have, so I'm just reading all of your comments, sorry. Yeah, so I've just finished the audio. Hopefully you've had the chance to go through those comments. You will have put in your answers to those, to the filled in blanks and to the multiple choice, and we'll go through the answers now. Hopefully you've had the chance to get some down on paper. Okay, so let's have a little look. I've got an answer slide here, but as you can see, there's quite a lot of them. So the first one was biographical outline. So this will be a biographical outline of the life of Keats. The next one is that Keats was not from a privileged background. Privileged. After that, it's progressive. They had a progressive curriculum. So those people who've written that, hopefully you got that one right. The next one, he was by profession a surgeon. Easily confused because I'm trying to mimic the exam here, and when they answer, they ask you questions and then put in information which could also be considered an answer. So for that example, I said that he was apprenticed to Thomas Hammond, who was a surgeon, which is the right answer. And then I went on to say that Keats was apprenticed as an assistant to the surgeon. So you can see how that would be easily confused. The next one is December 1816, which is when he was made to be allowed to be a doctor. The next one, everybody there was a gifted poet. Yeah. So hopefully everybody got that. The answer was B. He was too unwell to carry on was the next one. That was C. He was too unwell to carry on. And then 18 years old is the next answer. Fanny Brawne was 18 years old. That's A for anybody who caught that one. Then 5 out of 6 of his odes were written at this house, 5 out of the 6. The reason that the reviewers were really harsh towards Keats in particular is that they believed that a working class man could not be a poet. So if you wrote that, that one's correct. The next was back to sentence completion, and the words were death or my death would have been accepted. Climate would have been the next one. He was advised to move to a warmer climate. And then February, he died in February of 1821. And finally, the last one was genius. Genius. He was recognised as a genius. So looking at the comments, it looks like so many people participated today. Thank you so much for joining in and for listening to the audio, having that patience, and for writing down all those answers. I don't know if you could tell as I was reading it, but the life and the work of Keats is a huge passion of mine, and I just find his life one of the most tragic things that I've ever heard. I seem to cry every single time I read a book about it. So hopefully you learn something about that, as well as going through the exam answers. You all seem to have done really well. So thank you, Fatima. Mayata, is it? Thank you for joining in. And Walia, as always, and Ghaznabi, thank you all for participating in that one. Okay, so Walia said it would be better if we were given some more time to answer. Okay, so for the next one, I'll try to take it that little bit slower. I do try to sort of pause and speak slower when I know there's an answer coming up, but at the same time, I don't want to go too slowly, because if I do, then it becomes clear that what I've just said was the answer. And then everybody would get the right answer and you'd get the wrong one in the exam, because they don't slow down for the right answer in the exam. So I will try to take it a little bit slower. I've got one more example audio for us to go through today. But I'd also just like to have the feedback as well, because you seem that you've all done really well with those answers, but I hope you can tell the difference between those academic conversations and the general conversations that we did last week. Hopefully it's quite a lot more difficult for this week. I know, Fatima, you were saying that you really struggled with sections 3 and 4 on the academic topics, and I'd like to know what you find difficult about them. If you have any tips that you could share with anybody else who's watching to get those high bands. So do just let me know in the comments any feedback about that. Did you enjoy the audio? I hope that you did, learning about John Keats. And let me know how you found that. Was it easy? Was it difficult? Let me know. Okay, Alf said it's simple. Maybe simple for you, Alps. Thank you for your feedback, though. And I'll just give everybody a minute to get hold of some more writing material before we move on to the next audio. Okay. Mayata said that it was easy. Walia said yes, but we have to write a second time. Yeah, unfortunately, don't hear the audio twice. It's just the once. So yeah, do listen the first time that it comes around. Okay, so hopefully everybody has got hold of something to write with now. As usual, I'm going to give everybody a couple of minutes just to read through the slides and become accustomed to what's about to be asked of you, so you can anticipate your answers and listen out for that key information. Okay, and then we'll go through it. Okay, so I'll make the screen big now, and I'll flip through those slides, not the answers though. There we go. Okay, I'm going to flip to the next slide now and give you a minute to read that one. Okay, and I'm going to move to the last slide now to give you a chance to read through that one. Okay, hopefully that's been enough time for everybody to have a read and to become comfortable with what's about to be asked. For those people who've messaged me asking for the PowerPoint slides, absolutely I can send them to you, no problem. If you just message the Merseyside Publishing Facebook page and you direct your message to Laura, hopefully I'll see it. I know a couple of people have had problems with this, with not the right tutor getting back to them or their message not being received. I'd like to assure you that I do check through it. Just sometimes your message gets lost a little bit because we get an awful lot of them. So please be patient, and I will get back to you eventually. Okay, so just message me, direct your message to Laura, and I'll send you the slides. Okay, hopefully everybody has something to write with, and you'll be able to answer the questions for this audio. I'll flip back to the first slide now and we'll begin the audio. Everybody get ready to write your answers, and as a final reminder, don't put them in the chat straight away, because if you do, then people will copy your answers and you don't want that. And I'd also like to make a disclaimer before I start that I'm not a medical professional and I do not offer these things as advice for you as an individual. If you are considering changing your diet, please consult a doctor before doing so. Don't take this information as dietary advice. Okay, I just wanted to make that as a disclaimer. Yeah, okay, so let's begin the audio. I'll move to the first screen and I'll make it large. Okay. So I'll start the audio now. Everybody listen out and try to answer as you can. There have been many studies into the human diet in the recent years which support the idea that vegetarianism is a viable, healthy alternative to eating meat. Historically, there have been countless works that argue for a natural diet made up of vegetables, fruits, nuts, and other plant matter rather than meat. Some famous vegetarians include the mathematician Pythagoras, the great artist Leonardo da Vinci, the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, and the writer Leo Tolstoy. There has also been a historical tradition of the vegetarian diet being associated with weakness, ill health, or a poor immune system, but in fact the opposite is true. The vegetarian diet has been found to reduce inflammation due to the antioxidant properties of vegetables. Excessive inflammation can cause unwanted immune responses in the body, which delay the body's ability to recover from illness. Of course, the immune system should also be supported by a proper sleep, healthy body weight, and regular exercise. However, studies suggest that a balanced diet of fat, protein, and carbohydrates can be achieved by eating only vegetables, fruit, and nuts, along with other natural foods. It has been suggested that the biological evolution of humans shows that the body is unsuited to eating a diet consisting of meat. Compared with carnivorous animals, the human teeth are too short and not sharp enough to catch prey or to tear its flesh, and humans are unable to grow their nails into claws like a cat or a bird. So it is clear that humans have never been able to hunt for animals as food. Further, the stomach acid of a human is not strong enough to break down uncooked meat of an animal. Whereas carnivorous animals are able to kill and eat their prey raw, humans would be put in danger by the harmful bacteria on meat if they did not cook it before they ate it. Additionally, the human digestive system is much, much longer than that of carnivorous animals. This suggests that humans have adapted longer intestines to aid with their digestion of complex carbohydrates, which are found in fruits and vegetables. However, this also means that meat sits in the digestive system for much longer than it does in animals. This means that the meat actually putrefies whilst it is in the intestines of the human as it waits to be digested. This can cause the heavy, bloated feeling after eating, which many meat eaters will be familiar with, but that a lot of vegetarians don't face, as they don't have meat waiting in their intestines for such long periods. It is believed that meat eating began when humans were scavenging for food that carnivores had left behind of their prey, because it is clear that humans are not able to hunt for animals as their own food without the use of weapons. To this day, meat eaters have a higher incidence of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and other problems. Aside from the harmful biological effects on humans, a meat diet can also have a wider global effect on the environment too. The meat industry accounts for between 20 and 50% of all greenhouse gas emissions. The land which is farmed in order for cows to eat, in order to make them fat and ready to be eaten by humans, could be used to grow food for the starving populations of developing countries instead. Rather than using all of our water to grow these crops, we should be directing it towards those communities who desperately need water to survive. Instead of making the rich people of first world countries fatter, we should just direct our resources more evenly and distribute just enough food for everybody in the world to eat a healthy diet. The moral implications of the consequences of eating meat concern far more people than just the individual involved. The land must also be cleared in order to be farmed, which makes the meat industry the leading cause of global deforestation. Millions of acres must be ploughed to grow the food for animals to eat. In turn, the biodiversity of these ecosystems is reduced, as animals who are native to that area are forced out of their homes and often die as a result of the destruction of their habitats. Additionally, the fossil fuels emitted in the transportation of animals and meat all over the world is very damaging to the Earth's atmosphere and will eventually lead to climate change. Please also consider the morality of killing animals. Often, due to the high demand for meat created by the established trend in society, animals are not treated well before their deaths. Some animals are kept in very cramped, enclosed cages. Some are force-fed to make them larger and therefore more profitable to kill. Some of them are forced to reproduce with others so that more babies can be born, which will in turn be taken from their mothers and killed. The methods of killing these creatures is often very cruel and sometimes ineffective. We will not here discuss the methods used, as they would require very graphic descriptions. However, more details about this can be found on the internet. Next time you eat meat, please consider whether you would have been able to catch and kill that animal yourself, whether it is good for your body to ingest that food, and what environmental impact this food has had in the process of being brought to your plate. Okay, so that brings us, oh gosh, you couldn't see the screen. Oh no, you couldn't see the screen. What a mess. Oh no, what a mess. We won't be able to take your answers. I'm sorry, everybody. I was too busy reading. I didn't realise. I don't suppose anybody's just... Oh, God. So you didn't see any of the three? Oh, dear. Oh, Maya just had a go. Thank you. Thank you for having a go. I'll flip to the answer screen anyway. What a mess. Oh. Anyway, the answer screen. Alternative. Inflammation. Exercise. Evolution. Bacteria. Weapons. Distribute. We've got destruction, climate, and finally graphic. Oh, I'm so sorry that I ruined that for everybody. What a shame nobody was able to complete them all, but thank you so much for joining in anyway and for answering the ones that you did do. It's a huge help when people join in. Really, really good. Thank you everybody who did join in. I'm so sorry that the screen was blank. I completely didn't realise. Hopefully it's still been somewhat helpful. Yeah, I see, Fatima. I'll watch it back and see what you all saw. God, how embarrassing. Okay, well, thank you anyway for doing the questions that you did do. You all did really well on the ones that you did answer, so maybe you would have gotten it after all. And I'd just like to say disclaimer one more time, that was not information to be taken for your own diet advice. Please don't follow my advice, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, I can't advise you about your diets. So that brings us to the end of the listening series. We've gone through parts 1, 2, 3 and 4 now. Hopefully you found them useful. Hopefully you found it helpful. I understand there's very limited resources online for the IELTS listening. Just because once you've heard it once, oh gosh, then it's not the same as doing it again, because you're familiar with what's about to be asked. You're familiar with the audio, so obviously it gets easier the more that you listen to it, which is just a mess. So hopefully you found that useful today. I'd love to find out how you found the sessions. I'd love to find out what you'd like to see next week, as I'm going to start preparing the PowerPoints for those. So please send me any suggestions of things that you'd like to see, things that you'd like to be taught on. I'd be happy to cover any of your suggestions. If you would be so kind as to send them to me, you can either post them in the comments here or message me directly to the Facebook page. Just start your message to Laura. Thank you all for your time, for joining in. Please feel free to email me, feel free to message me. That's no problem. Hopefully I'll see them and get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you everybody who joined in today, and especially those people who answered the questions. Your participation is really valued. Thank you for that. Hopefully everybody has a great week. Stay safe, everybody. I don't know about everybody else, but our country goes back into lockdown as of Thursday. So who knows, maybe I'll be bringing you more lessons next week. Something to do. So thank you everybody so much for joining me today. And I'll see you the same time next week, Monday and Tuesday, 9 a.m. till 10 a.m. And as Ahmed says, stay blessed, everybody. And I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.